Hello, and welcome to the best show of the week, The Wind Down.
And why is it the best show?
Well, let's look at the title. The, not wind down, the wine down.
Wind down.
Okay, yes. Hillary and I, we're gonna drink some wine and we're gonna talk finances. So this should get pretty interesting. Shall I?
Yeah, let's do it.
Do you want to tell everyone about our first topic?
Sure. We are going to be talking about refinancing your home. Mortgage Q&A with AJ.
Yep.
This week, he talked about refinancing your home. Sorry, I'm very distracted by the wine being poured.
Am I doing this right?
You're fine.
All right.
And so, yeah, I mean, I think he had some really interesting insights. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Cheers. Cheers, everyone.
Yeah, so AJ's topic this week was refinancing a home. And I think it's a really pertinent topic right now, especially because interest rates are so low.
Mm-hmm.
And we actually looked into refinancing our home.
Really? Like in the near future?
Actually, we looked into it just a couple months ago.
Oh, wow.
And did all the due diligence on it, and then realized that closing costs in our state are really high. And so it financially didn't make the most sense for us.
Right, when you added up all of the numbers.
When it added up all the numbers, yes, in 30 years we would see the return and the decrease, but it was going to take too long for us to...
And will you be there in 30 years? Like,
that's the big question. Right. We don't know, right? I mean, we really like where we live, but it's not... You just never know these days.
I know. It always fascinates me with people like... I don't even know if I know any people that are 30-year planners, but I know they're out there. My husband and I, that's not our thing. But we are trying to get a little bit better with money, definitely. Because we just bought a house last year and it was at the start of the pandemic, so that was really scary. It was, we closed and then everything shut down. Our work shut down, everything shut down. And so it was, we were like, oh, great timing. But it was kind of awesome because I was interviewing AJ and I got to insert some of my own questions, and he's the expert.
Right.
So I asked him because when we bought our house, interest rates were 3.5, I believe, which apparently is still low. Like, this is a whole new world to me, but this is what we were told. And I was like, oh, this is great. But now it's like, I think almost a full point lower. And so we were, thinking about refinancing. And so I kind of went through it with him and he was like, yes, you should do it. But again, like, I don't know what our closing costs would be. So now you have me thinking because for a while there I was like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do. But now I'm not sure.
And I think we were totally gung-ho on doing it and ended up doing a home equity line of credit instead.
Oh,
because
you're going to do it with your house?
Yeah.
Nice. That's fun.
Yeah, make it, zhuzh it up a little bit.
Yeah, that's fun.
Just because it made more sense for us financially.
Right. That's more fun than refinancing. Money for decorating is just more fun than refinancing, isn't it?
That's true, but you can use some of the saved money to redecorate anyway. So it just kind of depends on what you're going to use it for.
But yeah. Oh, well. Yeah. Cheers.
Cheers to refinancing or not.
Far into the bottle. Can you tell us about this, the wine that we're drinking?
Sure. We're drinking VJB Vineyards out of Sonoma. They are a great family-owned winery and really have all sorts of delicious vintages, but one of my favorites is the Barbara 2018.
So you've tried their...
I have tried several of their wines, yes.
And we have the best.
Plus, wine tasting there is really fun, too.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay, I need to do that. I love that.
If you're ever in the Sonoma Valley.
I need to make a trip out there.
Maybe we need to have a work trip out there.
Yeah, the wine down in Sonoma Valley. This is a great plan. Back to refinancing. Yeah. I'm just kidding. I think this is a good segue. Should we move on to our next topic?
Yeah.
Our next topic from the week.
On Your Money, Your Wealth this week, they talked about being forced into early retirement and how almost 50% of Americans are forced to take early retirement.
That's
not
crazy.
people who want to retire early, which is definitely a whole segment of people. But I thought that was a really interesting show to watch, and I actually learned a few things myself. I don't know about you.
I learned a lot more than I expected to be honest. I didn't really know what to expect, but I related to it personally. Like this actually happened to my dad when he was quite young for retirement. He used to be a surgeon, and he developed an injury in his neck that affected his feeling in one of his hands, so he couldn't physically do surgery anymore. And I think he was in his mid-50s.
Wow.
And since then, he has found various avenues of, different ways of making money. And, just it's been fascinating watching him like pulling from other strengths that he has to make money, but that was a very early retirement that he did not plan for. So it does happen, doesn't it?
Right. I mean, I thought that it was really interesting when they were talking about how you have to be planning for this in your early 30s and 40s, just in case something happens where you do have to leave the workforce, whether it's, a disability or, something changes physically for you where you can't perform your job anymore and something you've trained for years doing, or whether you have to take care of a loved one. I think that is also an interesting reason, a sad one, to be leaving the workforce. But I think that happens quite a bit too.
It definitely does.
And it's something that you can't predict. So being ready and making sure that you have a plan in place, a strategy in place, so that you can...
and I feel like it's really hard for people. I mean, I know for myself, I'm in my 30s, to feel like I need to be doing that, So it's so important to like be knowledgeable around these topics and have a better understanding of how it works when you get older and the things that can happen, and try to start pre-planning, because it's easy to feel invincible. Like, oh, I'll worry about it when I get there.
Right.
And it's just, how do we light that fire to get things done earlier so that we're in a better position later on in life? It's hard, because even me, after watching it, I was like, oh, we have to get things in order. I talked to my husband, and I was like, oh. And then, next week rolls around and I'll be like, put it off. We have time. You know what I mean?
Exactly. But to your point, it is about like doing it, right? You have to be like, okay, this is a great idea, and now I need to follow through and actually get things in place.
And planting these seeds in our minds earlier the better, I really feel. And I know that this channel is geared towards sort of 30 and up. I really wish it was required viewing for college students, even high school students. Like, start planting these seeds really young so people start making better choices sooner. You know, you'll be in a better financial position if you start thinking about these things at 20, right? Like, imagine.
I mean, imagine all the money I could have saved already if I hadn't spent it on clothes in my 20s.
Oh my gosh. It hurts. Oh, all the rent because I wanted the cuter apartment and like
in the right location, right?
Yeah. Exactly. I'm like, oh jeez. Oh. The third most common reason for being forced into early retirement is being laid off, right? So, I mean, what do you do if you hit 50 and you just lose your job?
Right. And maybe you can't find something else, or you don't feel the job market has changed and you are hireable.
How do you plan for it? What do you do with your money? What do we do now?
Well, I think that they had a really great graphic where they talked about how you can't just have, or you shouldn't just have money just in your retirement accounts, because you can't take the money out of there without huge penalties before 60. So you need to have a little bit of diversity. And I think that that's the interesting thing, is that, whether it's an investment account or you have real estate or some other stream of where you can get some income from while you're waiting for your 401ks and your Roth IRAs and all of those other retirements.
Literally spread the wealth.
Literally spread the wealth. Yeah.
I don't know. You know how they say you should have 6 months worth of like savings to cover your mortgage and everything.
Yeah.
How do people do this? How do people have all of these different accounts with like, how do you...
Well, I think that's I actually have found that putting things into my savings account, I don't think of that as money that I actually have.
Yeah, it is a mindset.
Mentally, yeah. But if I kept it in my checking,
yeah, the checking
I'd be like, oh, look at all the money I got.
It's a piggy bank. It's
exactly.
It's staring at you, and you're like,
I should go shopping.
Yeah.
But it being in my savings, I'm like, great. It's there. I know it's there. I get to see it's there, but I don't think of it as being spendable money unless it's like an emergency.
Right. Don't look. Just don't look.
Exactly. But I think getting to that point, to get that 6 months worth of savings into your account, you have to set a goal.
Right.
And that can be a really challenging part. And maybe you get 2 months in there within a 6 month period. And then you get another 2, you have to kind of chunk it out so that you can get to that level.
They really broke that down on the show as well about the areas that you can pull back. And I felt so bad for the people who are, reaching retirement and they finally have that nice car that they've worked so hard for their whole life. And he was like, you might have to give up that nice car and go for the cheaper lease, And I was like, oh, come on, don't take their car,
Well, it's not that he's taking it. He's just saying, maybe you don't need one so fancy.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, gotta do what you gotta do, I guess.
Exactly.
So, shall we do a deep sea dive into trusts versus wills?
Let's do it.
I actually found this episode really interesting, mainly because I didn't know that I didn't know so much about it.
I think it's really interesting. You hear about wills in movies and, your parents might have them or whatever. And you hear about trusts and people, rich people having trusts.
I associate a trust with wealth.
Right. Exactly.
Right?
Totally. But I think they really broke it down in a really great way about what the difference is between the two, how you can have both.
Yeah.
And you might want both, but what the benefit is of one over the other or, I
mean, they were kind of selling me on the trust,
Yeah.
And I actually was so fascinated by this that I actually sat down with my mother and I had a conversation with her about it. I was like, out of curiosity, I know, because I knew she was doing a will. I knew, because she's been talking about it a lot, like organizing, whatever. But I was like, why did you choose a will over a trust? And she said that she had a combination. And they didn't get into that, so they need to do another episode. Because then I was like, what? Do you know anything about this?
I think you typically have both.
You do.
If you're gonna have the combination, it's both. So the will, I thought that it was really interesting and very clear when I'm not quite sure who said it, but they said that a will is an instruction sheet for a probate judge. So that is all a will is, but a trust actually gives you a little bit more nuance and you can have some flexibility within it, who you're leaving your money to, at what cadence you want to leave it to, whether it's a charity or a child or a sister or brother or whomever. I just thought that was a really great way to kind of talk about the difference between the two. Yeah.
Well, I just kept thinking, the last thing you want to do when you've lost a loved one is go to probate court.
Right. And pay fees that you wouldn't have to pay if you had set up a trust.
Because it's proving the will that was already written, right?
Right.
I mean, all of this was a completely new concept to me, and it seemed a little strange, to be honest. I mean, I'm hearing it for the first time, and maybe it's just normal to everybody else, but I was like, if one of my parents passed away, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of why I asked my mom, because I was like, I don't even care, you know what I mean? I was like, I don't want to go to probate court. That sounds horrible.
Right. I mean, I think one of the other things that I really liked that they said was that if you have young children, you should get a will or a trust. They said specifically a trust in place. And I think that really hit home to me, because when we have a small daughter and we were taking an international vacation, my husband and I, when she was about a year old, and my husband was insistent that we get our trust done before, and it was signed and dotted and everything done before we went on our trip, just in case anything happened.
Right.
And I was like, we don't need to have a trust done. That's for rich people. We don't have any money. But it really was super helpful because the estate planning attorney helped walk us through what we wanted to do, not only with any money that we were able to pass on at that point, but also what would happen to our daughter in case something happened to both of us, or if something happened to one of us, or if somebody remarries, if somebody like you get to walk through all those scenarios, which are tough conversations to have.
It really is, and it's not something that you would think that you'd be having right now, but it's true. I have a 6-month-old, and I have to consider these things for her sake, right? I mean, you never know. Anything could happen.
Right.
And now I'm like, we need to all sit down and I need my husband to hear this, and we need to like make some moves with this. Like now.
Right, because now it's like peace of mind. I don't worry about it. It's done. We'll revisit it probably every 10 years just to make sure that we feel like what we thought 10 years prior still stands.
Yeah.
And I think one of the other things too that they talk about the power of attorney.
The POA.
The POA.
Another thing I had to Google when I was watching it. I'm like, why can't you say the words? You know? Like, it's not that long.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Well, it's like in any, you get used to your jargon, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yep. I'm just learning that there's a lot of abbreviating in the financial world and a lot of assuming people know what they are. And then I always feel like the idiot because I'm like, oh my gosh, what's that? What does that stand for? I'm like Googling it on my phone really quick. But I did learn that it's very important to have that in place. Another thing that we need to do.
Well, and ours, we did it all with our estate planning attorney.
Yeah.
And so actually, when we ended up buying our house a couple years later, we had that all set up. And my husband was actually out of the country when we had to go sign our papers. And so because we had our POA done, I was able to sign for both of us.
Oh, wow.
Because it's legally binding, regardless of what state you're in.
Oh,
so
that's interesting.
It was such a relief that we didn't also have to scramble to do that, as well as do all of the paperwork for buying a house and all that jazz. So it was really nice that that's just all done.
And weren't they talking about how you have a power of attorney for all things financial, and then a power of attorney for health as well?
Yes.
That's a scary position to be in.
Yeah, but I mean, again, it makes you sit down and think about who's the right person, instead of just falling on somebody who might not be might not have the right mindset to deal with that.
Well, yeah, that's
because your husband might not be the right person. It might be your sister,
right,
or it might be your brother-in-law who knows you well enough, but is also a little bit on the I don't know. Yeah, I have no idea. But it might be somebody else.
Because it's too. I mean, you might have the same person for both. Can you have the same person for both?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it could be the same person, but yeah, it really is about like what kind of person is that, and how would they be in that situation, in such a heightened emotional situation like that, would they be able to take the reins and make some really difficult decisions for you? So these are things to really think about.
Totally. Fun things for a Friday night.
Very fun things for a Friday night. Cheers.
Cheers to that.
Jeez. Well, that was a great first week of shows on ROI TV. We are just so excited that this channel has finally started and can't wait to see you again next week.
Cheers.
Cheers.